Alright, let's get into this one because you guys have waited long enough for me to do another ZX-S series, video series. Before I start disassembling this, I should actually get to some maybe new news to you guys, but old news to me. So, I got all these parts from my ZX-S Evolution sent out for reproduction, and I just wanted to show you how it all looks, so you get a sense of what you can get. This is all, by the way, done from an American supplier. So yes, you can order through Fiberlight if you want, and I used Fiberlight parts for my ZX-S Evo rebuild, and those parts are great. Now you can also get them from Vintage RC Parts, and we did a few things. Some of the stuff is kind of conventional, like for example, the upper deck is just an exact reproduction for the upper deck. The new pieces are the lower deck. So we did a few things here with the lower deck. Number one, actually the only thing we did to the lower deck, if you can see, is to add a bit more material here, okay, around these two front holes, because on the original ZX-S Evo that I got, there's not a whole lot of material here around the front. Apparently that's a bit fragile, so I had that particular region, we had a little bit more material added there. It should make it a bit stronger, and it does not interfere with how the chassis goes together. So that should be all good. Alright, and then the other thing that we did was we played around. Well, we have lipo trays designed for the ZX-S and ZX-S Evolution, so those are all set, and we did some redesign of the towers. So let me first just kind of put away the original parts so that I can make sure I'm looking at the right stuff here. I ordered 2 sets of chassis and chassis parts, so that way I can, rebuild this one with all original parts, and then I have enough stuff, hopefully, between that and 3D printed materials to build a runner that I can actually beat the crap out of and not worry about destroying my original parts. So, let's see, we have upper decks, we have towers, all kinds of shit here. So, let's go to the let's see, that's all for the gearbox. Fine. And okay, so this is for, so this is basically a set for the front and rear towers. Should be. And what do? Well, we have the redesigned set, and we have the original set. I'm going to show you how they're different. So here is the original set. So for the front tower, original set had 3 shock mounting holes here and 3 camber link holes here. We basically just added another row for each. Okay, so if I overlay these, right, the original holes are here in the center, so we added on the modified tower another row below for the shock mounting positions and another row on the bottom here for the camber link mounting positions. Because this is the front tower and it mates to this plate here, we also modified the plate to have the same exact holes and hole locations as are on the front tower. So the reason why I added another row on the bottom is so that you can increase the roll center to run on higher grip tracks. Modern tracks tend to be very high grip, so having a set of rows on the bottom there would be helpful if you want to do that. And then likewise for the rear tower, right, we did sort of the same thing here. The rear tower, we added another row of shock mounting positions on the bottom here, and instead of just a row of 3 holes here, we made a 3x3 matrix kind of like what you get on you know, the ZXR, the ZXRR. So the stock holes here are the center row. There's just another row above and another row below. Okay. So I'll just give you a bit more tunability on your ZX-S or ZX-S Evolution. And yeah, so when I build a runner version of these, I will have those to use. Alright, so let's just put all this back in the bag here for now. Let's see, got all this, a lot of parts. So what we're going to do tonight, not today because it's dark out, it's tonight, is we're just going to tear this car down, you know, and see what we're really working with on this particular ZX-S. I do believe that it is going to be probably a much better experience than the ZX-S Evo that I restored. That one was a real heaping pile that needed quite a lot of work. This one, you know, it's going to need work, but I don't think it'll be too bad. The wheels and tires are not what came with this specific car. These are just really nice condition wheels and tires that I think came with the Evo. And I just tossed them on here. These are like brand new tires, newish wheels, and they're just nice. So good for display. And you know, maybe I'll put them on a different car one day. We'll see. Oops. As you can see, we got the Loshi shocks for the ZX-S. These springs are a little bit sort of scratched up here. The coating on the springs has been scratched off, so I'm going to have to find new Loshi springs, yellow rear, orange front, just to, you know, clean the car up a little bit. Okay, fine. Jeez, what's going on here? I think as far as the carbon plate parts are concerned, they look to be in good condition, at least at first glance. Of course, we'll see when we take it all apart. So, you know, maybe just clean them up and put them back together, and replace all of the Phillips screws with hex head screws. So these Phillips screws are self-tapping, and I hate self-tapping screws with a burning contempt. Oh, sorry. Just get this here. See all those boxes? Because we order a lot of shit. I gotta tear those all up and get them ready for recycling at some point. But in the meantime, they just consume that space there in the basement. Alright, let's take the wing off. Where should we start first? I suppose we should take the under tray off. That wouldn't be a bad idea. Which is certainly in rough shape. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. Alright, doesn't really matter. I guess we'll start at the front here. Take this off with the bumper. And by the way, I guess I'll use the same screw box as I had for the ZX-S Evo, where I was just storing screws and things in here. Because I'm going to replace most of these screws anyway, if not all of them. And you can see with the trained eye that the hub carriers on this are the Kyosho LA59. I got it checked to see if that's actually what the ZX-S had. I'll have to pull up a manual. The ZX-S Evolution came with a different set of front caster blocks that are shared with the, I think, the TF4 on-road sedan. And both are, you know, perfectly compatible with laser arms. They both use just the conventional vintage laser arms. So I suppose it is possible the original ZX-S had the older style laser caster blocks, the LA59s, which widen the front and increase the caster. And then I suppose for the Evo they updated to the different hub carriers, but I will have to check the facts on that. So this particular manual here, that's a ZX-S Evolution manual. So I'll just go dig up the ZX-S manual if I can find one and print that out and see if that corroborates my claim. What we got here? And of course they use some double-sided tape to help hold this thing to the chassis. Ooh, a little goopy there. So that is pretty beat up, especially at the front here. Okay, put it there for now. So this should scrape off, well, some of it will scrape off easily. What's this? Alright, I will deal with that later. Throw this out. What else we got here? So as you can see, the ZX-S came with a one-piece lower deck, with the front kick-up being part of the one-piece chassis. With the ZX-S Evo, the chassis was like three pieces actually. You had the main lower deck, the kick-up plate, which was actually aluminum, and then there was a carbon fiber plate that mated the two of those together, and then that was that. Okay, so where do we want to go with this? I guess we'll take the shocks off first, and of course the shock collar screws are rusted. Gotta replace those. I do have to say, I wonder why when Kyosho released the ZX-S they included low-C shocks with it. These low-C shocks for the time were pretty good. It's not a knock on low-C shocks, but Kyosho already had their own shocks, right? They had equalizer shocks for the ZX-RR, which were very good, and these are actually in pretty good condition. And they also had for, like, so this ZX-S was in the late 90s, early 2000s. So you probably also had twin cap shocks that came out around that time, like what you see with the ZX-S Evo. So even if they didn't have the twin cap shocks, they at least had their equalizer shocks. So I just wonder why they didn't include those. They would have been the correct length, I'm pretty sure. Just a little odd that they would include shocks from a different manufacturer. So looking at the front universals, those dog bone pins are in decent condition, but the rear universals, the outdrives are fine for the diff, but those dog bone pins have quite a bit of a gap to the outdrives, so I'm guessing those pins are pretty worn. Alright, so we'll see if we can replace those somehow. Again, this is going to be for the shelf, just like the Evo. You know, the runner that I plan to make eventually will be from mostly reproduced parts. At least that's the plan. Alright. What do we got here? This screw. So I'm going to put this screw back in because I think these spacers are actually part of the original build here. I don't want to lose track of them by losing them in this box. So I'm just going to put that screw back on the arm, and looks like it came with Lunsford turnbuckles, although again that may have been part of the original build, or this owner, previous owner, upgraded the turnbuckles. That's very possible. because for the ZX-S Evo, because I have leftover parts from that, that came with these steel turnbuckles that you see in a lot of these older Kyosho kits. So I'm guessing these were upgraded parts. And these shocks, you know, maybe need to be cleaned, but they feel good. Alright, now I guess the question is front or rear. You know what? Start with the middle. Get the easy stuff out of the way. So we can do battery posts. Take that off. Well, at least these screws aren't self-tapping, but they're still Phillips head, which I do not like. What the heck just happened? That went somewhere. Oh. I lost the screw. It's kind of stuck in the gearbox there. Alright, well, I will get that later. Was not expecting that. This, we'll put that in there with the shocks. We will go to the back. Just like this. One. 2 goes in there. Oh, there it is. Okay. Let's see. What else do we want to take out? Well, if we do that, then we get... yeah, okay. Alright, let's start with the front. So we're going to take this off. We'll just do like the tower and the arms together and then take that unit apart later. Put that back in. And then this comes out. You know what I want to do actually? To the extent that I can. Because I hate cranking this stuff by hand. Here we go. Let's use the power screwdriver. There we go. Alright. So, let's see. Is that the right mesh? No, it is not, actually, because those screw heads are a little bigger. So, let's try this. Is that good? So-so. How about this? Ah, that's better. Alright. Okay. So fast. That one already felt loose. Okay. Then, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I gotta take these two out on the top. You can do that by hand, I think. And then that should lift straight up, if I remember correctly. Okay, that's 1. Actually, you know what? It's not too dirty. It's just kind of dusty. Aged. It's clearly been sitting in a box for ages. That's how I like them. Okay. That should come off. Come on. Unless I'm missing something else. This goes to this. Alright, you know what? Just take everything. What's going on here? I do believe I am missing something. It's not coming off. Unless that went on a little differently. See, it's been a little while, so I actually have to go back and double check how I did this on the Evo. Yeah, no, that goes together. It just pops right on. Ah, with the gearbox? That's funny. Oh, I see, because that goes... Yeah, I already took that off. That's strange. Alright, well... Let's see if that's going to go in there. Alright, fine. Oops, don't want to do that. This one. Oh, I think it's because the upper deck, the way that slots are. Okay, that's funny. Shouldn't really be in the way. Right, you got two pieces here, they should just come right on out. Oh, maybe because of this. Boop. Boop. Why is that not coming out? It's kind of tight. Okay, come on. Also don't want to break that Lexan. Alright. And we'll just take this whole thing out then. There we go. Oh, that comes out. So, this, 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 and let's see. Alright, what I'll do, is I'll take out this rod, but I'll keep these spacers here. Put the E-clip back in. This hinge pin is going to have to be cleaned up for sure. Oops. Okay. And then I'll do the same thing on this side. Out. One, two, put you back in for now. Come on. Okay. Let's see, the plate parts, yeah, alright, fine. Let's put them in there, I guess. So, front diff, huh? unlike the Evo that I had, or have. That one came with a front one-way that was not a stocked unit. That might have been from Team Atlas, judging by the color of the diff pulley. This is a Kyosho ball diff. Good. Okay, so that's, all things considered, not bad. Previous owner really cranked down on this, which is probably unnecessary. Well, I'm guessing they might have done that because of the center one-way and how that just makes handling on loose dirt almost impossible. And so a common sort of trick, if you will, would be to tighten the front ball diff, because if you're getting all the steering from making the car rotate with the center one-way, why would you need a front diff? So you can just crank down on that, just to sort of try to help make the car a little bit more stable on corner entry. Okay, so we are going to need to, oh man, those are flathead. Alright. Take the front upper deck off. These screws. One. Okay, and then 1, 2, should just be this, 3, a silly spacer, oops, I'm going to keep this on here, I'll just thread it back in after I take the upper deck off. 4, so this comes off. I'm going to put this back on just to hold it in place. Because I do believe there are some other, yeah, there's some other spacers in there, so I don't want to muck all that up right now. I'll just keep that assembly together. Okay. Alright. Let's see. Can I get in there with this guy? No, I would need a different bit. Alright. So we can start undoing steering assembly and the gearbox. Take that out. This out. See, these are the smaller, I think they're what, 2.6 millimeter screws that go through these little ball ends here. So a very different screw. That may be why if you try to mount, you know, conventional ball studs on that with a 3mm thread, it might be hard to do so on these older style knuckles because they're actually meant for a 2.6mm thread. Alright, let's just pop that in there. Actually, you know, I kind of wonder what this labeling means. I mean, this, I think I'm guessing, is probably the shock oil weight that the previous owner used on the front and rear shocks, 30 and 20. Just a guess, he probably just put a sticker on there to remind himself. No idea what this is. Could be April 10th. Some race maybe, not entirely sure. I'll keep the stickers on there. I don't see any reason to take them off. Maybe they have some kind of historical significance. If any of you guys happen to know, I would like to know. So let me know. This out. Come on. Okay, got you. 1. 2. So again, we'll keep that fully assembled for now. In time I will deal with that. So let's see here. Let's take these screws out front. Alright, this plate. Oh, look at that. That was clever. So we cut some weights off, some lead weights, kind of shaved it down to just make... Did he shave that down, or is that the correct width? Might have shaved it down slightly, so that the weight would slot right in there. You see, right between the two front gearbox halves. That's pretty cool. You know what? I'll keep that on there, at least for now. I like that. That's really smart. Okay, so I guess the previous owner on this, in contrast to some of the other cars I've dealt with, this guy might have actually been a pretty intelligent person with what they were doing. They just, you know, they really beat this car up. At least I hope he got some good races out of it. So, alright, just gotta take this off. One. Two. Alright, so if anything, this is the part that I like the least about the ZX-S Evo, is this part right here. So the front rear inner hinge pin brace, it is kind of fragile, you know, right around here where the shape changes to accommodate the gearbox halves. I kind of understand why they did it the way that they did, but I still don't particularly like it. So basically what happened is they wanted to have the kick-up on the actual chassis. Now with the ZX-S, it's a one-piece chassis. On the Evo, it's a two-piece setup. But either way, they wanted the kick-up to be native to the chassis itself. Whereas on the ZXR, ZXRR, there was no kick-up on the chassis. It was a flat chassis, but the arms themselves had kick-up because of how the hinge pin blocks were designed. Now the thing is, doing it that way on the prior generation lasers, it works for the arm geometry, but you still don't get the chassis itself actually kicking up. So the approach angle onto jumps is still, it can be limited. When you have kick up on the chassis itself, you get a little bit of an improvement on the approach angle to jump faces. But in order to maintain the same geometries, to get the same final kick up angle, the way that this assembles is that the front gearbox half goes over the top of this inner hinge pin mount. Okay? I'm trying to remember, maybe like this. No, it was like this. And because of that, they had to, I suppose, thin this down a little bit and make it at this weird angle to make it essentially fit correctly. I know I'm kind of hacking up my explanation of this, but it has something to do with that. And so if you combine that with the fact that, you know, this belt has to reach the diff, and you don't want the belt itself to end up, you know, rubbing against this hinge pin brace, then you do have to thin the material down here, or you have to run it at an angle. So you notice that this centerpiece here is at an angle, so that when this belt comes down, it's also coming down at an angle, and when it wraps around the diff, it's not going to grind against or rub against this hinge pin brace. So it's a smart design. They did it for a very good reason. And then, you know, these gearbox halves go over the top of each of these notches here. Okay, so that way when this is all set up, when everything's mounted, you retain the same exact kick-up geometries you had on the older lasers, but you're doing with a chassis kick-up. And I guess that just forces a certain compromise in how this particular piece is designed, and you can end up with, you know, this sort of junction here between these side components and the center component, where they're at these offset angles, and maybe, you know, I suppose the material is a bit thinner here at this junction, and that's where you can get breakage potentially. Again, I've never run this, but if I had to guess, that could be one area where this thing can actually break. If you have a really hard impact and it yanks on the arm, maybe it can snap there. The actual material around here looks perfectly fine, but you know, as you know, like for the older lasers, you can get aluminum blocks for the inner hinge pin mount. Those won't work on this, on the ZXR and the ZXRR, because the angles of these holes have to be offset to accommodate the fact that the chassis itself is kicked up, right? On the older ZXRs, the chassis was flat, and so these angles had to be shifted a little differently, had to be more upward on the front rear inner hinge pin mount on the older lasers. So that's number one. Number two, the actual hole positioning here, this left hole and this right hole, the spacing between those holes is different on this chassis than it is on the old lasers. So even if you tried to take that old, the older style inner hinge pin mount and force fit it here, it actually wouldn't fit because the hole spacings are different. So you are kind of forced to use this part. So as a result, it's actually really good that I had these reproduced for 3D printing. Now, you know, the 3D printed version of that part is probably not going to be, we'll have to see. We'll see how strong it is. But at the very least, because it's 3D printed, you can order a whole bunch of them. So if it does break, you know, it should be easy to replace if you need to, and not have to worry about getting on your knees for some hoarder who happens to have, you know, a spare one of those original parts. Who wants to do that? So, alright, now let's get to the back. So we got, alright, it's just that one here. As you can see, this gear cover is quite dirty. It needs to be cleaned up. Right? A little dusty, but that should be easy to clean. No worries. Yeah, I'll probably hang on to that one. Let me just put that one back in here, actually. Boop, boop, boop. And then what is that screw doing? So that screw is just kind of floating there. Oh, I guess that was for the motor. Just kind of hanging out there. Okay. So let's see. How do we want to attack this side? I guess we just pop those right off. Pop this off. So as you can see, the sway bar is all scratched up, and I need new links there. So I have new links, UTW005 for the new style Ultimas. It's kind of, you know, wasting money just to get this part. I wish they sold just this parts tree so I could buy that without having to buy a sway bar set that I don't need. But anyway, you know, you do what you gotta do. So we're gonna pop this one off. Okay. Take the sway bar off. Start there. So, and of course that's held on to the other side with a nut. Let's see, well, I don't like scratching anodizing, but there we go. Okay, just want to loosen it enough so I can get that off. Alright. That's one side. And the other side is going to be here, and that one's kind of in there. Okay. we go. Should come right off. So I already used my new orange sway bar on the ZX-S Evo, but I do have yellow and green. Of course, they're all different thicknesses, so it's not, just for the sake of color. So yeah, maybe if I can find another set of those, maybe I'll just get another set and, have another orange one that I can put on this. Let's see, where do we want to go next? I guess we can do the arms. That should be pretty easy. If I just take that off, this off, should pop right off. And I think I put the other one in here. I did, didn't I? Yep. Okay. And as you can see, this does have this little thing here, which is kind of interesting. Again, I got to check to see if the ZX-S came with this rear hub carrier extension that was native to the ZX-RR. I'm pretty sure. Although this rear hub carrier seems to have been cut for some reason. Or, because these hub carriers were perhaps part of what came with the car. Previous owner just did this given the type of track they were running on, just a guess.